Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is NVIDIA earnings. And as of this recording, the conference call ended about 15 minutes ago. Shares are down just over 3% in after hours trading. And that compares to over the past week, shares have been up just over 3%. So basically, the company has given back the gains that it has. The stock has given back those gains over the past week. And as just kind of a high level starter, I'm surprised that the stock is down a few percent. I would have expected it to be up a few percent, which gets us to the pressure point. And of course, this quarter, we've talked a lot about the noise. There was more noise around this quarter and the guidance and what's implied than I can remember ever on an NVIDIA quarter, let alone on any other mega cap tech company. Of course, a lot of that noise is related to all the mechanics around China, specifically how much contribution from H20 they should expect, separately as what's the timing of this newer chip for China. And last is how does the relationship with the US and this revenue share impact how to model this going forward? So there's a lot of noise around that. So before we get to kind of slicing and dicing the noise, let's do some level setting in terms of what expectations were going into this. Was it the whisper number for the October quarter? This is what really matters most, is the guidance. The whisper number for revenue for October was 55 billion. Now that compares to the in-print expectation of 53.5 billion. So the whisper was $1.5 billion, call it, higher than where the street was at. They guided to 54 billion. So first headline is that the guide for October is below the whisper. But that did not include, the 54 billion did not include contribution for H20s in China. Now, we don't know exactly how much of that 55 billion estimate factored in, how much China H20 revenue was in that, but we can make a guess. And if we go back and look at how the estimate revisions have played out over the past month and a half, and recall in the middle of July is when it became pretty clear that they're going to be able to start selling H20s in China again, we saw the street estimates go up $2 billion at that point. Now, if you want to get really detailed, is that the analysts that adjusted their numbers, the consensus, the average, went up by $2 billion for the October quarter. But for those analysts the 18 out of the 42 analysts who had actually adjusted their numbers, it went up more like 4 billion. So for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to assume that 2 billion in that whisper number was related to China. So when we make that adjustment, you take that 2 billion out, they basically got it to 54 billion and the whisper number was 53 billion. So they beat the whisper. Now remember, the whisper is a high bar. It's higher than the in-print bar. So they beat the higher in-print number by 2%. But still they beat it. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the stock should be up. The second is related to a nugget that Jensen threw out kind of 3/4 of the way through the call, where he was asked a question about China and how to think about the China business more broadly. And he reiterated his comment that he thinks that if they could sell fully into China, this would be a $50 billion a year business for them. They're going to do about $250 billion next year. So just to give you a point of perspective, let's call it 1/5, 20% of the business. That comment he's had before, but what was new was he said he could see that growing at 50%. So there was an astute analyst, I'm forgetting who came up with this follow-up question, which was, can we infer that when you said China's up 50%, that the overall data center revenue growth next year should be up 50%? Now the street's at looking for 29%. So that would be measurably higher than where the street's at. And Jensen basically dodged the question. He gave a lot of positive commentary. He said that there is staggering demand out there for the product. He talked about the fact that there are companies that the capacity still isn't near being met, and that there are a lot of companies that are emerging who haven't asked for capacity who will ask. And he outlined the opportunity with AI first companies being 25 billion in aggregate revenue this year, expected to grow at 10x for next year to 250 billion. So he did not say, yes, you can take that 50% China growth and apply it for overall. My read is China's probably growing a little bit faster than the rest of the world. But Jensen thinks that they're going to grow next year between 40 and 50%. As I mentioned, the street's at 29%. So that's a pretty big jump. And something doesn't really jive here, because when you look at it from that perspective, that's further evidence that the stock could be up. And in fact, at the very end of the quarter, the stock dipped a little bit. It started the call at the very end of the call, it dipped a little bit. It started the call being down, call it 2.5%, ended the call down just a little bit over 3%. And so I don't have a good explanation of why it's not acting more favorably. I do feel better about Deepwater's ownership of Nvidia based on everything that we heard in the call tonight, and still believe that the next year, that growth number is what's really important. It's going to be higher than where the street's at. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.